Comic Book Savant, episode 336.
I know this. This I know. All that I have, all that is me, resides inside my poetry. And every time I write a rhyme, it might be the line that sets mine free. And also, I know that I don't...
Welcome to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This week, we're doing something a little different. So I want you guys to pay attention real quick before I launch into the episode. I'm going to do the first official YouTube video for Comic Book Savant with this episode. This episode, we're going to be doing a review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. We're going to do it in two parts. I'm going to do my normal audio episode that you guys are accustomed to, and it's going to be a spoiler-filled review, and you're getting it right now. If you haven't seen the movie yet, don't worry about it. Just stop this episode, stop by the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Comic Book Savant, and I'm going to be doing a non-spoiler review, a video review that'll be there on the YouTube channel. So if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want it spoiled, pause this right now, go to youtube.com/Comic Book Savant, and then watch the non-spoiler review. And then when you get a chance to see the movie and you want to hear everything, then you come back, you can listen to this episode so nothing is spoiled for you. I know I've been promising you guys YouTube content for a while. I haven't shot the video yet. I will probably be shooting it after I record this episode. But by the time you hear this, it'll be in place, so no worries there. With all that being said, let me give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. If you like this show and like the content, it's a one-stop shop for finding comic book related podcasts on the internet. There are literally hundreds of different podcasts listed there, from single person podcasts like myself to roundtable discussion shows based on particular publishers, teams, characters, you name it. Again, there are literally hundreds of different shows available. So if you like this content, a lot of people that I've collaborated with over the years are listed there. A ton of new people. Each month, it's more and more podcasts, that are joining the Comics Podcast Network and being added to that directory. So if you go to comicspodcast.com, again, it is a portal of tons of shows, and you can see all the episodes listed. They're categorized, so you can go through and sort through and find pretty much a podcast on anything in the realm of comic books that you want to find. It's a great resource if you're just looking for more comic book content to listen to on your daily commute or just in your day-to-day. Definitely, if you have a moment, check out the Comics Podcast Network at comicspodcast.com. That being said, I'd like to give a shout out to the sponsor for this and every episode, which is InStockTrades.com. Again, one of the best places to go online when you're looking for any type of collected edition, trade paperback, hardcover, absolute edition, omnibus, Marvel Masterworks, you name it. They have a wide selection of books to choose from. It is really my one-stop shop if I'm trying to find something when it comes to collected editions. Again, if you're unfamiliar with InStockTrades.com, if you go to their homepage, they have a page on the front homepage. They have deals of the week where you can get discounts up to 50% off. They update it weekly. Right now, they have Absolute Preacher Volume 2 hardcover, 50% off for $75. They have Amazing Spider-Man Epic Collection. What volume is this? Amazing Spider-Man Epic Collection trade paperback Goblins Last Stand. That is 50% off, only $17.49. We have Daredevil by Brubaker and Lark Omnibus Volume 2. That is 50% off, only $37.50. We have Ever After from the Pages of Fables, trade paperback, Volume 1, Pandora. That is 50% off, only $8.49. $8.49. We have the Monsters hardcover, Volume 1, Marvel Monster Bus by Lee and Lieber and Kirby. That is 50% off, only $50. And we have Superwoman trade paperback, Volume 1, Who Killed Superwoman. This is the first Superwoman trade coming out of Rebirth, 50% off, only $8.49. Again, if you're a U.S. customer and you're not familiar, if you're a U.S. customer and you place an order of $50 or more, you get free shipping within the U.S. So definitely that's something you need to keep in mind if you're a U.S. customer. If you're overseas or out of the country, you still get the great savings and get that 50% off. But when you hit that $50 threshold, you won't get the free shipping. That's only for U.S.-based customers, but you still get all the great savings, and they have some of the most competitive, international shipping rates around. So you're still going to save a ton of money, so there's no worries there. And if I didn't state it earlier, with in-stock trades, they have the 50% off, but they still have discounts starting at $35.42, going up to 50% off with those deals of the week. So again, you can save tons of money over at InStockTrades.com. I appreciate their support for the last contest that we're running. We're going to be running a contest that should be starting up sometime in July and will end in August. Then I'm working out with them now, so it's going to be something big because it's going to tie into the 11-year anniversary of the show. So that's in the works now. That should be coming up soon. I'll be able to reveal more about it when that time comes. Now back to the meat of the episode, which is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy 2. This was a highly anticipated movie. This is a sequel to the I guess it was a runaway hit. I don't know. It was a big risk for Marvel when they did Guardians of the Galaxy 1. It came out, it crushed, it did extremely well. The characters became insanely popular. So it's a lot of expectations and hopes that went into this movie. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is directed by James Gunn, also written by James Gunn, and the breakdown is as follows. Set to the backdrop of the awesome mixtape number 2, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 continues the team's adventures as they unravel the mystery of Peter Quill's true parentage. And the cast is as follows. We have Chris Pratt back as Star-Lord. We have Bradley Cooper back doing the voice of Rocket. We have Kieran Gillian back as Nebula. Zoe Saldana back as Gamora. Vin Diesel still doing the voice for Baby Groot. Dave Bautista as Drax. Michael Rooker back as Yondu. Kurt Russell as Ego. Sylvester Stallone as Takar Agord. Elizabeth Debicki as Aisha. And Sean Gunn as Kraglin. And I have to say just off the top, I enjoyed this movie immensely. I got a lot of emotion out the movie that I necessarily wasn't expecting from a Marvel movie. It really gave, like people say now, that gave me the feels in a lot of different ways for very personal reasons, which I'll get into some a little later. But I really enjoyed it. And the funny thing was, me and my wife, the night before, we went to go see it Saturday of last week. And we decided to rewatch the first movie before we went to go see the second movie. And my wife is not a huge comic book fan at all. She's kind of she will watch like comic book cartoons and the animated movies, so she'll watch those with me in the live action movies, and I kind of fill in the blanks for her in between. It's not like she reads comics, but she watches all the movies and will ask me about continuity stuff, and she'll even like Wikipedia certain stuff or what have you. But she really doesn't read comics. She's read a few things here and there. It's very sparse. In between there. So I've rubbed off on her over our time together, but again, she's not a diehard comics fan, but she loves the movies, and Guardians Volume 1 is by far like her favorite Marvel MCU movie. Like, she watches it all the time. So she rewatched it with me because I hadn't watched it in a while. Because the thing I've said, and I've gone on the record and said it on the podcast before, is that I'm not a huge fan of Guardians 1. I love the characters, but the movie surrounding the characters are something that I could kind of take it or leave it. And that carries over. And I also said that like about Suicide Squad as well. It's like the characters are fascinating to me, and it draws me into the particular characters, but the world they're in those movies I felt like could have been done so much better, but love the characters. And it's a similar feeling coming out of Guardians of the Galaxy. So I was surprised that James Gunn did such a awesome job fleshing out these characters more, and really just made me, I already liked them. He made me go from liking these characters to loving these characters. And I think that's the most important thing. And I think in the core, that's what Marvel has done so right in their movies. They've made you fall in love with these characters. Now we're fully invested. And I feel like James Gunn has done an exceptional job, because we have only seen these characters within these two movies. He's done a lot with the other part of the Marvel cinematic universe. We saw Captain America show up different places. We saw Iron Man show up everywhere else. So we've seen characters sprinkled out. So we got Black Widow, like she hasn't had her own movie, but between the Avengers movies, Iron Man movies, Captain America movies, we are fully invested in her as a character because we've seen her so many places. James Gunn has condensed it down within two movies to make you really be invested in these characters. Now, some more so than others, when far as how invested you are in the characters. I'll have to say off the bat, one of my biggest issues with the first movie, and it was a minor one, and you guys have heard me talk about it when I've talked about Justice League and seeing Cyborg, and how Cyborg, to me, just with the CGI and everything with his suit, he doesn't look like Cyborg to me, and it throws me off, and it adds to the suspension of disbelief, and it takes me out of the movie. One of my biggest gripes that I talked about when I reviewed the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie was Zoe Saldana's makeup as Gamora, and it just, because she's a very beautiful woman, and how the makeup was done, it didn't work for me, and it took me out of believing she was a green skinned character. I don't know, watching both movies within like a 24-hour period of one another, I don't know what's different, but it's different. However they did the makeup was different, and she looked so much better and looked so much more like herself and more believable as a green skinned alien of some sort in the second movie. I don't know what it was, but it just was clearly evident, because I watched both movies, the night before, went the next morning, saw the second movie, and it is clearly a difference in her makeup, and it helped, and it kept me immersed in the movie, and buying into that whole world. It was just a minor thing, and again, I used to do another podcast that I did called Pop Media Savant, where I reviewed movies, and a lot of people that listen would chime in and be like, most people don't look at stuff that you look at and break down what you break down in movie reviews, and I like, as much as I love comics, I love film and all the aspects around it, and I think it's just a big thing in the immersion component of movies and these comic book movies, because we've seen and gotten to know these characters in comics over years, decades of our lives. So we imagine what they look like, or how we want to see this stuff transferred on screen to immerse us in it and draw us into that world, just like when we're reading a comic, it does. So little things like that just stick out like a sore thumb, and it just always broke that suspension of disbelief, of believing that character, and they nailed it. So I was so much more invested in Zoe Saldana's Gamora character. I thought with pretty much all the characters, the character development was extremely strong in this movie. they were coming together as a team in the first movie, and they had to meet one another. This one, there are teams, so you can pull back, and as the story progresses, they pair them off, and they give you a little background of each character. I think the one character that didn't get as most character development was Groot, just because of Baby Groot, and so he was kind of shortchanged. The team was expanded in a way because we had Nebula pulled into the fray. Oh man, I forgot to list the young lady that played Mantis. I don't know how I forgot that. I must have accidentally forgot to put her in my notes because I thought I had her on there. I might have accidentally deleted that. I'm looking it up now. What was her name? Pom Clemenkeith. I hope I didn't butcher that too bad. That played Mantis. She did a wonderful job as well. I didn't want to leave her off, and it seemed like I apparently did from my notes. Bad host. Don't hold that against me. All the characters were developed well, and like I said, they paired them off, which gave them some spotlight. The main story was about Peter's parentage, which was, part of what, drew us to his character was his kind of story. He is clearly the protagonist, the center of all this from the first movie. And, that was one of those big lingering questions, that it was something about him and his parentage. And we knew that Yondu was hired to bring him to his father, but for some reason he chose not to. So it was good getting those questions answered. But though Peter's story was the centerpiece of this movie, how do I say this? It was the one not that I liked the least, but the one I was least concerned with. Maybe, and I don't know why. I like Chris Pratt as Star-Lord, but I liked the buildup of the other characters around it a lot more. Like I said, I felt another thing I felt about the movie as well, because this is an important thing. We saw so much Baby Groot in the advertising of the movie. How he was used in the movie, I thought, yes, he's adorable. I felt he was a little bit overexposed in the movie and felt like he could have been better used, or some of that time, especially in the opening scene of the movie, where, as a fan of the Guardians, I want to see them come together as a team and fight a menace. And that whole opening scene where they're fighting the creature, but you really can't see it, is in the background because they're focusing on Baby Groot dancing around. I felt like I didn't need that. I didn't need that at all. Some of the other scenes I felt like were more effective with Groot, Baby Groot, in the towards the end of the movie, in the middle parts of the movie. I think one of the most emotional scenes was seeing him in the Ravengers, where they make him the little outfit and they're pouring drinks on him and like kicking and abusing him. I thought that was very emotional and showing how Groot got picked on and served as a great emotional beat for Baby Groot. But that whole scene of seeing him dancing and running around, I wanted to see the fight. I didn't care about Baby Groot dancing around, and it was the whole focus with the fight being in the periphery, kind of blurred out, where you saw pieces and seeing people thrown around. I wanted to see that fight. I wanted to see them work as a team. I would have preferred that Baby Groot maybe would have been on the ship or something, and that time was used later to maybe be used to show more that screen time, even though it was like maybe 5-6 minutes or something of screen time. That means a lot when you have a running time of a movie now, and you have like a 2-hour or slightly over 2-hour movie. Those few minutes where you focused on that could have been repurposed in a way where we could have saw the actual fight, or that could have been used to when we're fleshing out some of the individual characters' story, one thing I felt like that was sorely missing from the movie that I really wanted to see is with Drax's character, with Dave Bautista, or Batista, if you know him from the wrestling world, is his character was total fun and hilarious. It was a really good scene that was set up with him and Mantis, where he spoke on his wife and his daughter, and we keep hearing this about his wife and his daughter. I felt like it was a really beautiful set scene when they were sitting on the stairs looking out, and she was using her powers, touching him to experience what he was experiencing. And I think it would have been cool at that moment to maybe see a flashback of him at a happier time with his wife and his daughter, or show a brief flashback or a nightmare, some flashback scene of when Ronan killed his family, and him seeing it and what's setting him down this path of revenge, and why he wants to, what set him on the path that we first meet him in the first movie, and what motivates him to go on, because it's a huge motivator. But I think he was relegated to the role of comic relief throughout the movie. But I thought like that was something that those minutes of screen time could have been used for better, and would have added a non-comedic element to Drax's character. Not saying it didn't work, because I loved it, and I think this movie shows that he has the chops. And I feel like the first movie helped people in Hollywood notice Batista. I feel like this part in this movie is going to make him a star, because he's been in movies like Skyfall? Not Skyfall, Spectre. And he has the chops and the presence, and this shows he has the charisma. So he's gonna not be the Rock per se, but he'll be the Rock light, I want to say. So this movie sets him up and takes him to a lot of different places. And I feel like by the time we get Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, he's definitely gonna be on a whole nother level of his stardom for sure. And I hope the two characters that I hope get more due in the next volume will be Gamora and Drax. I need to see Drax in a more even role, where we still get the comedy because he does it so well, but at the same time we get a little bit of drama side from him. And with Gamora, so much of everything with her has been so focused on her relationship with Nebula and her feelings towards Thanos. I'd like to see some backstory. She speaks on it here again, maybe some flashbacks, but a little bit, have her confront a little bit more head on. So much has been focused in the first movies around Peter Quill, and I feel like he's the centerpiece of this world. He is for the cosmic part of the Marvel ECU cinematic universe, or what have you. He is the Tony Stark. He's the glue that holds it all together. At this point, we've had 2 movies to establish that. I want to see in the next movie, maybe he's relegated to a smaller role, and we get a Gamora in the forefront and a Drax. I felt like the arc was pretty good and well done with like Rocket. I don't think keep developing the character, and I love his character. I think he is one of my favorite characters of the Guardians team is Rocket. And Bradley Cooper, he just does such a great job with the voice, and I get chills up my spine every time they do that scene. And I noticed that they did it again in this movie. They did it in the first one, where like when they're breaking out of the prison, and Drax throws Rocket the gun and he cocks it, and he's like, "Oh yeah." I love it. Every time I love it how Bradley just does it, and how they animate Rocket is like, now it's on, and he just goes off with the gun. It's like one of the pinnacle of my favorite scene in the whole first movie is that jail breakout sequence. And it was a similar scene in this one where he gets the gun and he clicks it open. He's like, oh yeah, and I'm like, my boy's about to go off. Now, I just love it. But I think his arc and how him and Yondu were paired together, I thought that was done really well. It was really emotional, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. If you don't think it, when you disagree with me, okay, I get it. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I think as much as they try to make this a Star-Lord movie about Chris Pratt, I think it was more so in the emotion that was drawn from it all is that it's a Yondu movie, because that's the story arc to me that was the emotional thread line. It ties back into the whole Peter Quill thing and who's your father and who's your daddy, and this is where the emotion in the movie plays in, because it struck home for me because I experienced that in life. And let me not say that. I experienced something similar to that as a kid growing up. It wasn't that my father wasn't a dad to me, but my parents divorced when I was super young. My mom remarried. My stepfather was like my dad in my earlier years. He was like my dad. He was I was very, 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 very young. He was who I identified with as my dad. Not saying my father wasn't there. He always was there financially to support and was there, but him and my mom just had a very tumultuous relationship. So when I found out later in life, it wasn't that my father wasn't trying to be there. It just was made hard, but he was very prevalent in my life later in life. And, I went through that point and that realization of things like Peter went through. I went through that as a very young child, dealing with that. And so it took me to a very personal place. So I could relate to the struggle that Peter went through the movie. So it hit me in an unusual place because, certain things that you go through and you've experienced in life, you don't necessarily expect to play out in a certain aspect when you're watching a movie, a big, fun, epic movie like Guardians of the Galaxy. So it hit me, in my heart in a weird way, and seeing that and seeing his realization and him coping with it and him losing Yondu, in the end, the way he did and how it hit him. Again, I've talked about it on the show before. Me and my dad later in life became extremely close, and I lost him it'll be 6 years actually this month from the time I lost him, and how emotional it was for me and how devastating it was for me. So that scene when Yondu risked his life to save him, I didn't cry, but I felt that emotion that Peter did when realizing, things that I was looking for my whole life were right in front of me. And though he wasn't the best individual, he loved me, and that was my father. And that was, the kind of thing that I went through in life, me personally, with my own father. So that hit me in an extremely emotional spot. And I love that. I love that I went in for a big fun action movie, and I got the fun action movie, but it made me think and it hit me in my heart. You don't get that with movies all the time, with very realistic themes. Even though outlandish as this whole backdrop of Guardians of the Galaxy is, James Gunn went and made you feel something. And it wasn't a ton of action. I don't think it was even as much action in this movie as it was in the first movie, but I realized as I watched it and as I enjoyed it, I didn't need it as much. But it was very much Michael Rooker's movie. I felt like he's a phenomenal actor, and it was cool to see him because we've seen him on television and we see him in smaller roles and in movies throughout time. But I feel like he really got to shine in this movie and gave such a great performance. And I could have done with more time with him and Rocket. how he opened Rocket up and made Rocket realize he was pushing the people closest to him away. That whole storyline and the revelation that Yondu had, like, that was me, that's what I did. This is why, I pushed, Peter away, and why he, fled the way he did, and, why the Ravagers turned on him. He saw all the errors in his way, and before he, died, and the heroes, what heroic way he did, he was able to help Rocket realize the error in his ways. So I feel like, Rocket will be an even stronger character going in the next movie, learning what we learned and seeing the effect, and maybe the continued effect that Yondu's death will have on him, in his relationship moving forward with the rest of the team. I liked Nebula so much better. I could not stand Nebula in the first movie. Karen Gillian, I felt like did a better job. I loved her stories that she told that really starts building up Thanos as a threat. Because from what we've seen on screen of Thanos at this point, we have nothing to fear. The stories that she told about him ripping off her arm, pulling out her eye, cracking open her head, and like how he, basically rebuilt her, and he punished her by trying to improve her every time, she lost in combat to Gamora, was like just spine tingling, and just was like, Thanos is a horrible person. So, and I feel like we need that context building up towards Infinity War to kind of know he's really a horrible being. We haven't seen anything with him yet. He was more so just a talking head in Guardians 1. We never saw him get his hands dirty, but we saw at the end of Civil War, he's putting on a gauntlet and is like, now I have to get my hands dirty. But, we hadn't seen anything on camera, so it's good that we start getting some context. And now you know why Nebula hates Gamora so much. And you saw Gamora come to terms with, she was just so caught up in winning and trying to survive, she wasn't realizing the thing. So that dynamic worked. It made me like Nebula. I felt her backstory and actually start liking the character and want to see more with her, and hopefully we see her in Infinity War and maybe show up at some extent in Guardians 3, because I would like to see more from the character now. James Gunn has made me care about a character I couldn't stand from the first movie. So like I said, I'm invested in the character now and want to see more from her. Piggybacking off of that, like I've said before, I definitely want to see Gamora get more spotlight in the next movie. Gunn did a wonderful job in characters that from the team I didn't like as much from the first movie. He got me invested into these characters now. So like I said, I care for all the characters equally. And like I said, I don't dislike Star-Lord, but again, like everything so far has been so centered on him. I just really need a third movie. I don't think James Gunn listens to this, but James Gunn, if you do, I need him to fall in the background some. There's been too much Quill. I need a little less Quill in my life, and I need more of the other characters. Maybe if Mantis is still with the team, her. Like I said, I got to have my Gamora and Batista kind of brought up to the forefront. You've done justice by Rocket to this point. Groot, because he's so limited in vocabulary, and I don't know how much more with his backstory and stuff you can do, but definitely with the Drax and the Gamora, sprinkle some Nebula in there, bring it up. And Mantis, elevate those characters to the status that you've kind of done with Star-Lord at this point. In the next movie, I think they need their just due at this point. I think we've gotten his whole thing. I genuinely also like the chemistry between Gamora and Peter Quill. They made a reference to Cheers, which was funny because as a kid, it was one of my favorite shows growing up. Watched every episode of that show till it went off the air. Another show that I kind of felt like their shows James Gunn's age and that we're similar in age, was Moonlighting a lot. Those themes of those rom-comedies that were on in the early 80s, early to mid 80s, or ran most of the 80s, because both shows ran quite a while, ran through most of that decade. Showing he was a kid of that time, how their chemistry and dynamic is playing out. I like it. I like where it's going, and they genuinely have Chris Pratt and Zoe Saldana have very good on-screen chemistry, which is so important because I feel like Marvel doesn't all the time hit the mark on that. Exactly, I'm just going to mention Thor, Jane Foster, and Thor, and those actors, just Chris Hemsworth and I'm seeing her name. You know who I'm talking about. I'm going blank on her name, but you know what I'm talking about. Their chemistry just didn't work. So when it does work and it feels natural, I like that. Another thing I didn't care about in the movie was the soundtrack. The soundtrack didn't move me as much. My wife is a little bit older than me. She's like 4.5 years older than me. Like, the music, she loved it. She was literally, this is like so embarrassing. I was picking with her after the movie. Was like, she was literally like singing the songs in the movie theater. I was like, look at her. I was like, psh, psh, hun, we're in a movie. And she was like just feeling it. Like, she was zoning. Like, she was humming the music. She was singing the music low key. But I ain't gonna lie. When we went to go see the first one, we both were kind of singing songs and humming songs, but like, she was really getting it. And I was picking with her about it. And the funny thing was, she was picking on me because I was like, when I say I enjoyed this movie, to meet me, if any of you guys, and some of you have met me over the years, is, I'm a 6 foot tall, 300 plus pound man, and I'm kind of have a stone-faced demeanor. I'm very silly when you get to know me. I get nervous around people, so I'm really quiet and observative. But I'm just like, I'm a nut. I like to be silly when I'm not, like, have this stern look on my face. So she was like, I don't think you realize how loud you were in the movie theater. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She was like, yeah, you laughed at stuff that everybody else laughed at, but then you laughed at some other stuff, or you kept laughing at some other stuff that people weren't laughing at. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, you were loud. And I was like, well, I don't care. I had a good time, She's like, well, I had a good time. And it's cool that you can watch a movie that you can do that with and have such a good time. Another thing that was a major problem, again, these are small nitpicks on a movie that I thoroughly enjoyed, but I felt like the main problem with the story, I've heard certain people say they felt like the story was choppy, it doesn't pick up to the third act, blah, 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 blah. I like my character development. I love it. I love it in my comics. I love it in my comic book movies. I didn't think the movie was choppy. I didn't feel like it was any more choppier than what the first movie was, because it kind of was a string of events happening with a little bit of story around it. I felt like it was more story and exposition and all that kind of stuff, but it explained things. Like, I always talk to my wife about these things after we view a movie. Like, I need to credit her for a lot of these reviews, because whenever we go watch a movie, I don't know if other couples do this. Like, we will rate the movie. So the rating that I normally get is a consensus rating that me and my wife do after we watch the movie. We'll talk about the things we liked and disliked about the movie. And one thing that I felt like, and I felt like the movie flowed, it wasn't the smoothest, but just watching the first one wasn't. So I was cool with that. Certain things you accept by certain filmmakers or certain movies, but it accomplished, to me, it still accomplished more than the first movie did, because it made me care about these characters even more, or love these characters more than I already did. And that's the purpose of the movie. So if something happens, like, I felt Yondu's death at the end, you built that character up throughout the movie for that moment at the end, and it was so emotional and so touching. And then seeing him get that awesome proper Ravengers send-off, funeral that he was, that Sakaar was saying that he would never get because he broke the code, and that whole backstory, I loved. But the problem I had is with the ego character. from the moment, and I made sure I saw no spoilers. I just saw what everybody else saw with trailers or whatever. I just knew how Kurt Russell's performance was, and how in that beginning scene they showed the thing with the plant when they had the flashback with Kirk Douglas and Peter's mom. I knew when he got off the ship and started talking to Peter when they first meet, and he's like, I have to take you. You have to come to this planet. I knew at that point he was the bad guy in the movie. I knew it at that point. I didn't have anybody tell me. I knew it. In the rest of the movie, when it came to Ego, I was waiting for the reveal. I was just sitting on it because I knew it was going to happen, and I knew he was going to be the bad guy. And so I telegraphed the major plot point in the movie very early on. From the first time not the first time, it's really the second time we see him on screen, but the first time the actual Peter meets him, I knew he was the villain in the movie. That to me it was a little problem because I was just, in the back of my head, I was just waiting for the turn. There we go. We got the turn. Was Kurt Russell good as Ego and was a good villain? Yes, I think he was one of the better villains. He was tons better than how Ronan was used. They did a really good job. And again, it was the emotional tie of him being Peter's father, and inherently, to a fault, how good Peter is being this roguish character, that he does some good and some bad. But in his core, he's a good individual, to be where his father, not so much. I thought was a good contrast and made the confrontation even more personal, between the two. So again, I really, really liked that part, but it was just a little bit telegraphed in that whole setup of, I knew it was coming. So when it did, I wasn't shocked. How dark they kind of went at parts surprised me. It did. I have to say, for a Marvel Studios movie, this movie had some dark spots in it. And I was also saying this to my wife, and I want to make this point clear to you guys. I feel, this is just me being a grandparent now, so I tend to take these things to heart, because I always think about my grandson when I watch these movies now, because he's 5.5, and I think about it to a point because I love movies, and with my relationship with him, he tends to like stuff that I like. I would not have taken a 5.5 or 6-year-old to see this movie. And I think with the marketing, they throw Baby Groot, and he's so cute and he's so adorable. It's some heavy stuff in this movie. And so I implore parents or grandparents to keep those things in mind because it was a lot of younger kids, and I felt like parts. It was a very comical and very funny movie, but when certain things, and it was death, it was people died in this movie, and I think it was a little bit more graphic than the death scenes that we got from the first movie, and especially seeing a major character die like Yondu, which could be emotional. Be mindful, I'll just say, because like I said, now when I watch these movies, I always in the back of my head, I'm like, is this something I could take my grandson to see, or would I sit down and watch it with him? At him being 5.5, 6 years old, no. 9 or 10 years old, yeah, I guess maybe. At that point, so just be mindful, because I saw a lot of young kids that wanted to see Baby Groot, and they went crazy every time Baby Groot came on screen. But then some of the language was a little bit stronger, more adult, humorish, with the jokes and the profanities that were used, and I felt like that was kind of a mixed bag with the marketing, because they pushed cutesy, and I felt like the language was a little bit more adult. The tone was a little bit darker, and it's definitely some heavier things in it. So just keep those things in mind. Like I said, this to me was a great movie. For me, if you know my rating scale, it's a must buy. Numerically, on a number scale of 1 to 10, this movie's about a 9 for me. I gave the first Guardians like an 8. I say it's a full point more because I just love the character development, the emotion. The movie was such an emotional movie, not to the detriment of it. To me, it enhances it and makes this movie mean even more to me. So I like it that much more over the first one. The first one is still great, as I'm going to get into in a second, because every time a new Marvel movie comes out, I have to update my ranking of the Marvel movies, which we're going to do from worst to first. Number 15 is Thor: The Dark World. We all know that is the worst movie of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so we're going to keep that where it needs to be. Number 14 for me is Iron Man 2 still. Number 13 is Iron Man 3. Number 12 is Avengers: Age of Ultron. Number 11 is The Incredible Hulk. Number 10 is Doctor Strange. Number 9 is Thor. Number 8 is Ant-Man. Number 7 is Captain America: The First Avenger. Number 6 is Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 5 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Number 4 is Iron Man. Number 3 is The Avengers. Number 2 is Captain America: Civil War. And number 1 on my list, ranking the Marvel movies from worst to first, is still Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I think when you line these up, this is definitely the second best sequel next to, of course, Captain America: Winter Soldier. For sure, in my opinion. This movie's not without its flaws again, but I looked at, when I gave this movie a score, I looked at the overall enjoyment I had with the movie. It's flaws with the story and the pacing and things, but they weren't so much where it derailed the movie. I think it just helped the movie by far. So again, it's one of my favorites. Can't wait till it comes out on home video. I feel like I don't watch the first Guardians like that. I don't, like I said, I don't know how long it had been since I had watched it. My wife watches it all the time. I don't know when the last time I had watched it. I literally didn't know. So I definitely will be watching Volume 2 way more than I ever have watched Volume 1 for sure. It's just a fun movie. And like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. Before I get out of here, because this episode is running a little bit longer than a normal episode, definitely go out, share this episode. If you know someone that has seen the movie and want to hear a good review, and you guys think this review was good, share it, spread the word. You can always go to the website. If you guys follow me on Facebook or Instagram, I need some Instagram followers. I'm making a call to action. Instagram at Comic Book Savant. Follow me. I only got like 37 followers. Can I get 100? Can I get like 100? I just need a small number to start. Where I look like I got some street cred in the Instagram world. Can I get a follow? You know what I'm saying? Like, it only takes a second. I'll be your friend. Like, I'm just a podcaster trying to make it in the streets here. Just I need a presence. Can you hook me up with a follow? Anyway, I'm on, go to the website, comicbooksavant.com. All the links to the social media are on there. But if you want to follow me on Twitter, at comicbooksavant. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's at comicbooksavant as well. All together, one word. Like I mentioned before, it will be a non-spoiler, video review on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Comic Book Savant, all one word. Again, all the links to the social media are right there on the homepage of the Comic Book Savant website. I do want to apologize because I had said something previously that was inaccurate because I didn't realize I didn't do it. I added a search box on the website on comicbooksavant.com for you to go back and you can search for different episodes I've done on any topic or what have you. The more recent stuff was cataloged. I went back and I realized not everything was coming up when I was doing search queries, and I was confused about why. And I forgot when I revamped the website a couple of years back, I lost the cataloging data on older posts because in the transfer of the website and the updating of it. So I am painstakingly, and I talked about this on Facebook the other day, I've been manually by hand going back on the website. All the more current stuff is cataloged, so you would find like the last few years, all that stuff when you search, you find it. It was the stuff later than that it wouldn't pull up in those queries because the search data wasn't there. The tags and all the metadata and all that techie stuff wasn't there. I am manually going back one by one, and I started from the first episode, and I'm like in the 90s now. I still got another couple of hundred and some change to do. But now, hopefully by next week's episode, the site will be properly cataloged. So then when you search for a particular topic, you will get all 336 episodes. Like, they'll be cataloged properly. So, and I'm putting in plenty of tags. So if you're looking for, did you cover Thor? Did you cover this character? Did you talk about this writer? All of it should be pretty much cataloged properly. So when the search function will work to its full potency. And like I said, I forgot when I upgraded the site a couple of years ago that all that I did not realize it all didn't carry over till I was just testing some search queries and was like, why is it only this many episodes came up when I know I've done twice that many? And I went back and I looked in, that's the computer nerd in me and the web designer. I saw something was wrong, so I've had to fix it. So I've obsessively been going over since this weekend, updating every single post. And it's more tedious than anything, but I do apologize because I said something was functional and then it wasn't to my satisfaction. So soon, and when it's totally updated properly, I'll let you guys know for sure. And again, I do apologize for the misinformation. Again, like, subscribe, share. I'm only here because of you guys. Your guys' support is what helps me carry this whole thing through. So the more eyes we can get on this, somebody forward this stuff to Marvel. Let Marvel know about who I am. I do these great reviews. Let them know. Share it to them. Say, hey, Marvel, Comic Book Savant has a new review out for your movie and it's good. Check it out. Get some eyes on it. So we can, we're trying to elevate this thing. I feel like, I do good stuff in the comic industry, and I definitely want to get it in more people's, eyes and ears, and just to get established more. You guys help me do, so much with this, and I'm just ready to take it to the next level. That's why I'm working hard and focusing on trying to get this YouTube channel off before the end of the year. Like I said, I feel good about doing this first review, even though I'm scared as I don't know what and be in front of a camera because I'm not used to it. I'm used to being behind a mic. But again, I'm trying different things to elevate and to give you guys different forms of content except for the just doing the audio podcast, to do some video and expand. You have to keep pushing yourself to your limits if you're ever going to improve or to get further in life. You got to push past certain things, and that's where I'm at this point. I want to give you more and more and better content. So that's what I'm striving to do. So enough about that. Again, follow me on social media, spread the word. Again, check out the YouTube channel for the non-spoiler review. Let people know. Follow me on Instagram at Comic Book Savant, all one word, at Comic Book Savant on the grams. Follow me, subscribe to the YouTube channel because more content, original content separate from the audio will start popping up there. This is the first of scheduled rollout plan I have. So again, be on the lookout for that down the road. And that's all I have for you guys this week. I'll see you again next week for another episode of Comic Book Savant. Take care.
And into lyrical wholeness. And I know this, and I know this. This I know, this I know.